The first official NASCAR game for over 4 years is just about to arrive, and we now know a release date, but only on console. Here is everything you need to know about NASCAR 25. So Tom, we finally have an official release date for NASCAR 25. It is later this year as we expected, but it's not quite as simple as it may seem.
October 14th, you'll be able to play an official NASCAR game, a new official NASCAR game produced by iRacing. At last! Let's hope this one works. So that is, just to reiterate, 14th of October this year on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S. However, we do not have a date for PC via Steam. It is confirmed for that platform, but it's to follow soon after is the term. So we'll talk more about that later on in the video, and it's probably best if we now we've got the date out of the way, and we know that it's coming very soon, sort of what to expect of this game.
Yeah, so PC players, it doesn't matter though, because you've already got iRacing on PC. You don't need a new NASCAR game when iRacing and this game are exactly the same, right?
I mentioned it, I alluded to it already, but it's produced by iRacing, but it's not. iRacing is not the main developer. And when I say iRacing, I mean the hybrid team working on the PC subscription-based sim racing platform, I think headquartered in Massachusetts. This is made by Monster Games, who are based in Minnesota, checks notes. And or they might also be, I have seen them referred to within an iRacing blog somewhere as iRacing Minnesota as well. So this was a studio that was purchased by iRacing in early 2022 and has a legacy that goes all the way back to 1998 with an official Dodge Viper game. And in the mix has had I would say a banger racing game called, it was Test Drive Eve of Destruction, but in Europe it was also called Driven to Destruction. I played that recently for a video that we did, and that's a wonderful, wonderful game. But mainly it's known for NASCAR games, I would think. 7 official NASCAR games, including Dirt to Daytona, which is a revered title. But perhaps more recently, 4 NASCAR Heat games between 2016 and 2019, ending with NASCAR Heat 4. At which point it gets really confusing, and we're not going to go delve into the financials here, but they were paired with 704 games. 704 games was invested into by Motorsport Games. Motorsport Games eventually took them over entirely. At that point, the developer Monster Games went its separate ways. It made some Tony Stewart games using the same game engine as NASCAR Heat, which is Unity-based, with their own physics system within Unity, which it's normally for indie games and mobile games and things like this, Unity. And then they also made an official SRX game, and they got the rights and the license, and they did 2 World of Outlaws, official World of Outlaws games in 2022 and 2024. By that point, they were under the stewardship of iRacing, but they were using their own game engine. Meanwhile, Motorsport Games made NASCAR Heat 5, which was a real reskinning of Heat 4, so still using the Monster Games tech. And then it's all new NASCAR 21 Ignition, which was a disaster and an unmitigated failure. But nothing to do with this development team. So they went their separate paths. Now we're coming back when Monster Games is back on NASCAR. It's going to use Unreal Engine graphics. It's going to use iRacing assets in terms of tracks and cars. But the physics, we believe, is not iRacing, and potentially it's just a derivation of World of Outlaws, which then was a derivation of NASCAR Heat. So we might end up with something that has lines of code related to NASCAR Heat within it, we believe.
There's something I do need to cover though, because I might need to fact check myself from the intro as well, because we said the last official NASCAR game was over 4 years ago. NASCAR Rivals on Switch actually came after Ignition, did it not? So we can't forget the Switch titles. So maybe the last PC or PlayStation or Xbox NASCAR title was more than 4 years ago. I did say that, but NASCAR Rivals was more recent than that, and it wasn't terrible. It wasn't Ignition. It was basically NASCAR Heat for Switch, right? Or Heat 5 for Switch.
Well, there was 2 Switch games there. There wasn't the Heat plus Ultimate Max or something, and then there was Rivals. Yeah, you're right. Which it did have the same Cup cars that I use now to that rule set, so it was updated with that and that season's roster. And it had the paint booth from Ignition, but you're right. It was another reskin of NASCAR Heat. So we're all going round in circles, going back to those NASCAR Heat games, it seems.
Yeah, it's weird. It's actually in some ways the most recent NASCAR game is a derivative of Heat. We wonder whether this will be the same, but obviously, a lot of individuals I would think that were involved in the initial Heat series may well be on this, along with all of your iRacing stuff, so to speak. We obviously know quite a lot about this game already, Tom. We've heard and we've watched the dev diaries over time. NASCAR is an incredibly popular racing series. I don't know how much of it you watch yourself, but I try to follow it as many Sundays as I can. At least if I can't see the end of the race live, I'll watch the highlights. But there are a lot of things that this game got to consider, and this development team have got to get right, because obviously, being such a popular racing series, it's going to be a very popular game, and there's so much pressure on it thanks to the disaster that was Ignition.
You're right. I follow the Cup Series as much as you do, in particular because we both watch Australian supercars a lot, and there's a certain driver who's winning nearly every road course race in Cup Series, Shane van Gisbergen, or SVG for short, a certain Kiwi who's doing really well, won in Chicago recently, won in Sonoma. He's also still doing Xfinity races as well on the road courses. So acutely...
One in Mexico as well, 3 races in a row, which I think is the first time that's happened on road courses for many, many years.
Amazing skills on road courses. Ovals, it's not really going that well for him. But as a result, anyway, for the last basically 5 years or so at least, I've been following every single NASCAR race from a highlights point of view, and if they have the ability to watch it live, which is very difficult here in the UK, I've been following it as well. That just goes to show how much of a show and entertaining NASCAR is to watch, and the game sort of needs to recapture that. And I think what we've seen so far from these little teaser trailers is more about the atmosphere and less about the gameplay, which is a slight concern at the minute. Because there is a brief hint of gameplay that we've seen, and they haven't looked that smooth. There's like a car exiting a pit lane, it looks a bit weird. We've mentioned that in a prior video. And the producer, Matt Lewis, on a Discord Q&A, recently said that gameplay trailer we should expect about late August to tie in when all the pre-orders go live at the same time. I just have a bit of flashbacks. Do you remember, John, when we didn't get gameplay for Ignition until the last minute either?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we got lots and lots of pretty images of the game looking incredible. We got lots of excitement and information and hyperbole, but we didn't actually see a gameplay trailer till very, very late. And obviously, the rest is history, as they say. I think tying the gameplay trailer for this game in with the kind of pre-order window is an interesting decision. It sounds like that's something that they want to do in line with many other games, but it's a little bit funny because obviously by the time you actually get to pre-order, you want to have seen as much as possible to make an informed decision. So I wonder if that's deliberate in that sense, to try and just hold off on giving away too much. I understand it from a marketing point of view, but yeah, it's interesting.
Well, I think that sounds very skeptical from our point of view, but it's only because we've been here before. We were both working in the industry when Ignition was coming along, and that was a very difficult time for everybody involved. iRacing obviously has a really great relationship with NASCAR. Co-founded by someone who still owns a NASCAR team, for example, and also it is official. NASCAR simulation has been for many years, and they do a great job recreation and laser scanning all the tracks. As we mentioned already, they're going to be ported into this game and the cars. And this dev team has history of making solid, working, functional NASCAR games. I'm not going to get too excited there. I think Heat 5 looks better than it perhaps is because Ignition was worse and there's been nothing since. We have to be careful of that. Keep forgetting Rivals. So they have the reputation and the history to be able to deliver. But until we try it, actually, then we're not going to say, oh my God, instant buy day one.
You're right. And 100%, I think Heat and Heat 5 and 4 specifically weren't as popular when they were active. They've just, I think, rose-tinted spectacles because of Ignition's poor run. A lot of people are remembering them as we just want another Heat. Like, give us Heat again with new cars because of how bad Ignition was. It's almost like they just want to get back aboard the boat. They don't want to go to the beautiful coastline somewhere. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We should, though, have a career mode, and it sounds like it's going to be a fairly detailed career mode. We have 4 categories, of course. When we talk about NASCAR, we've been talking anyway about watching the Sprint Cup, but of course there is also Xfinity and the Truck Series and ARCA, and all 4 of these series will feature within the game and a career mode. So you will start in the ARCA series and work your way through. It sounds like there are some interesting decisions being made there. It sounds like there's a little bit of decision making for the player to do during the career, but no active kind of silly season or driver market by the sounds of it.
Yeah, so I can't reiterate enough. Obviously, we're giving you the highlights here in a nice little package video and the release date, and we're talking about our hopes and expectations for the game. But if you want the nitty-gritty, I can't recommend enough finding, which is very difficult to find, so we'll link it in the description for this, the NASCAR 25. It's called Game Developer Q&A with Matt Lewis on the NASCAR 25 official YouTube channel. Not many people have watched this. It was an hour long. This was a recording of a Discord Q&A, which, again, not many people joined, which I joined and watched and recorded and wrote up a highlight. So you can also get, there's an article on the Traxion website, 9 things we learned from a NASCAR 25 developer Q&A. So do read that as well, and we'll link to it. There was also another interview recently with, I think, Insider Gaming, and people came from that, oh my word, there's going to be no silly season. Well, actually, that was already announced in June as part of this dev Q&A. So yeah, great interview on Insider Gaming as well. But I would say also watch the Discord Q&A because, yeah, there's going to be no driver swaps. Now, I don't think the Heat game necessarily had a proper system like this, but I think Ignition, from memory now, did have some sort of driver market or driver swaps in the career mode, or when you enter the next season, things have moved around a bit. It's something we expect if we look at other yearly official sports games in the racing genre, such as MotoGP, and I think Formula 1 games actually do it best because you can actually then bid for drivers. There's like secret meetings with the drivers for contract negotiations, and obviously then there's management sims like F1 Manager, RIP. But it's a shame they haven't got this now. Or what I would say for all the missing features on this game, such as, thanks to Insider Gaming, split screen, the developer Q&A on Discord, which confirmed doesn't seem to be any multiplayer ranking system or cross-platform online lobbies. Yeah. I'm jumping ahead around, sorry, John. But all these features are labelled under the umbrella, well, we've got a 5-year plan or maybe a 10-year plan, and not for year one. So let's not write off this game completely if we're missing features right now. It just has to be solid, and then they can build upon it. But you're right, you mentioned career mode. That's going to be the main focus of this initial game. They're going to have Dale Jr. popping up with some podcast bits or some turning points, so they call it, in the career mode. You rise through the ranks. There's a bit on one of the developer diaries where they say the Taj Mahal of workshops, that's your goal. But it also feels like within the marketing bump, is this going to be very, very similar to the NASCAR Heat career? I suspect it might be. We'll have to see.
Yeah, at least for the first game in a new, let's say, development cycle, even though it's a returning team in many ways, at least they've got something. At least we've got a career mode. It's maybe not feature complete,
yeah, exactly.
But they did say, and you mentioned it there, a 10-year plan is in the offing, so we can expect more in the future, but obviously, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's very easy in the gaming industry to get very, very excited thinking about all the future things, but we need to see what's in front of us when this game launches in October. Now, I just said we don't need to get ahead of ourselves, but let's get ahead of ourselves for a second. Do you think this game could be something we see yearly, bi-yearly? Do you think maybe it's going to be a live service update platform?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, there's no word on this yet. And it might be that it's not been decided, but there's no confirmation. So what does that tell you? Well, the contract is multi-year to make these games, but with contracts like this, there's always going to be exit clauses of either side, right? We saw that with, we referenced it earlier, like F1 Manager, right? They didn't have to make the final game in the series because they negotiated a way out. The World of Outlaws games, the official World of Outlaw game that Monster Games worked with under stewardship of iRacing recently, one came out in 2022, then for 2023, it was a DLC pack. Then there was a new game for 2024. I don't know if there's going to be a 2025 update for that. I suspect the team is very busy on NASCAR 25, to be honest. But that's the preferred method I would like to see. Because if we're saying here, okay, there's going to be a career mode, but there's features like no cross-platform multiplayer and no multiplayer ranking system that we would like that are missing, then give the development team some time to sell a DLC pack with that season's roster, but work on the fundamentals behind the scenes. That would be my vote. Yours?
Yeah, exactly the same, personally. I've always liked the idea of a biannual release for these motorsport-focused titles, simply because I think trying to release a new game every single year doesn't give you enough time to really make big improvements unless you buy the game once every 3 or 4 years. So why not just focus on making those improvements, making a bigger difference, and then having some DLC to tide you over in the meantime? Because 2 years really in the gaming world is not long. Like, how many games do we still feel are new that are actually way more than 2 years old?
Yeah.
So I would have to totally agree with you on that one. A few other things that we should mention, Tom, as well. No previous gen consoles, so no PS4 or Xbox One version, which I'm sure some people will be disappointed about, but others will be happy about, like yourself probably, because more resources to work on making the game better, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's good for me. They're running Unreal Engine, like I say, for the very first time, either iRacing or Monster Games. So fewer platforms means they can focus on making it run the best it can. We don't have one of the things we don't know yet is like, there was a question in the Discord Q&A, and I think it got misconstrued of like, what are the specs? And they were like, yeah, it's PS5 and PS5 Pro and Xbox Series S. And I was like, no. I think they meant like frames per second, Is it at 4K, 1080? You know, all this sort of stuff. So we don't know that. We don't know how well it runs. So I think they need as much headroom as possible, basically. And also, when it was announced, this contract and Motorsport Games did work on Switch versions, as we mentioned, and also NASCAR Heat Mobile. We don't believe that the iRacing is going to be working on those platforms either. There was a World of Outlaws on Switch, but tellingly, the sequel did not come out on Switch for that game. So maybe that didn't sell to expectations, let's say. There's also a few things that I'm going to rapid fire put in here, but there will be DLC. It'll predominantly be paint schemes, just like prior NASCAR games. There's a load of one-time race sponsors or special paint schemes in the real world NASCAR. They're going to import that in. We're saying like, it doesn't have some features, but they have got 187 real world drivers, and presumably their pictures and names in the game from the first attempt. There is when you're covering 4 series, there's a lot of work to do there. So, and all the tracks are laser scanned. I think we did say that, but it should have every single track, ovals and road courses in there. But yeah, you're right. On the platforms,
private lobbies as well. There will be private lobbies for online users, which is good. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so you could do leagues, but again, because it's not cross-platform, you're gonna have to have like a PS5 league, an Xbox league, and a PC league. Bit of a shame that. So hopefully they can rectify that in the future. And then also on the going back to platforms, yes, we don't have the release date for Steam PC yet. They say it's soon, but we don't know how soon. That could be a few weeks or days, right? But it could also be like World of Outlaws Dirt Racing 24, which took 5 months to go from console to PC. So just be patient, is my word.
Yes, that is it. With all of this, be patient, and we need to wait until we see more, as always, with our judgments, and that's something I've continued to learn more and more. The longer I've been in this industry, the further I've realised that, don't count your chickens until they hatch, essentially. So we'll have to wait and see. The World of Outlaw games are a great reference point, because obviously they're actually more recent than NASCAR Heat games, so they kind of give us more of a representation of maybe where the development team are actually at with titles. And I actually think the World of Outlaws games, even though maybe simplified in their physics, even though more accessible racers, are actually really decent, solid games that are engaging for fans of the series, are fun to drive, if not, the top level of realism. That's what iRacing and stuff is for. So I'm still feeling positive about all of this. I'm just being careful with my expectation level.
Exactly that. I just said we need to reiterate once again, this is not iRacing on consoles. This is something different. But there is some confusion with the marketing. I understand why they want to push it, and all wear iRacing shirts in the presentations that they're doing, and really talk up the realism and accuracy of the models and stuff. But just be clear, we're looking forward to it, but we're also well aware that this is not that PC sim on a console, and that's fine, because I think a general, let's say yearly, although we don't know that, official racing game should have a level of accessibility, but also be deep enough to appease people who are really into the sport.
Absolutely. And if you are really into the sport, let us know down in the comments below what your thoughts are about what you've heard towards NASCAR 25. Are you excited? Are you pessimistic? Are you just numb to it all after the whole debacle of the last 5 years? And of course, if you want to follow all the latest updates on this game as we find them out, keep an eye daily on the Traxion.gg website, and we will have YouTube videos, of course, covering this game running up to launch as well. So do subscribe to the channel, leave a like button if you've enjoyed this video, and until next time, from myself and Tom, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.